Do you ever wonder why it seems so hard to get a title for an abandoned vehicle? Or maybe why getting a vehicle declared as abandoned may not be a good idea? Well, here's one of the reasons why abandoned vehicle title is usually not the way to go. Most states make it extremely difficult to get an abandoned vehicle title. And here's why. It's a story from Virginia. Now, this story is a few years old, but it is the reason why abandoned title applications are not usually the pathway to get a title. The police department reported that DMV-related scam was about abandoned vehicles. And what would happen is several people have come forward saying their vehicles were fraudulently retitled to somebody without their permission. What would happen is people would walk around neighborhoods and write down the VIN number of vehicles. And they wouldn't touch the vehicles, they wouldn't move the vehicles. He would walk down the roads, copy down the VIN numbers. Then the person would go to the DMV and say the vehicles were abandoned on his property. And once he went through the abandoned vehicle process, then he would go get the vehicle. The vehicle would stay right where it was in the person's driveway. They wouldn't have any inkling that anything was going on with their vehicle. And then at some point, some of the vehicles received a letter saying their vehicle was claimed as abandoned, and then they would object to it. And those vehicles would be stopped. But a few of them, the letters never got to the person, or maybe this criminal put on a fake address for the notice so it didn't get to them. And sure enough, one vehicle walked outside, his car was not there. The person called the police and gave him the VIN number. And they said, nothing you can do. They can't file a stolen report because the vehicle was not in their name anymore. So this is why it's hard to get a title for an abandoned vehicle. Because abandoned vehicle title is basically asking the DMV to take your word for it that you are now the owner of the vehicle. You have no paperwork, no bill of sale, no title, nothing. They're just taking your word for it that the vehicle now belongs to you. And without any documentation, the DMV now is becoming the decider of who gets to own a vehicle. They also notice that certain vehicles are targeted, certain brands, because those are dealerships more likely to allow people to get keys without the vehicle being present. So the guy would get the title. He would take the title with his name on it down to the dealership, get a key, go over to the guy's house where the car is, drive away with the car. One of the victims said, I feel unsafe. The DMV essentially handed over my title to someone else with no investigation. So if you are somebody who wants to get a title for a vehicle that you're saying is abandoned, do you want it to be easier? Because if it's easier, then somebody could just claim the vehicle in your yard. The reason why abandoned vehicle is difficult is because you know the story of the vehicle, but the DMV doesn't. And you're essentially telling them to take you at your word to just hand you a free car. And it's difficult because there's two sides to every story. If the process is easy, then no vehicle is safe. So they make it hard on purpose. If you legitimately have an abandoned vehicle and you want to get a title, there's a process. Certified letter, requesting removal, all kinds of different things you have to do. Right? You have to auction off the car, intent to auction posting for 21 days. If you jump through a bunch of hoops and it's really an abandoned vehicle, it's probably going to be okay. But at least back 4 or 5 years ago, when this happened, it was easier than what it was now. And many people, legitimate owners, lost their vehicles. So the DMV made it a little more difficult. Now, in reality, if you are thinking about using a process of an abandoned vehicle to get a title, more times than not, it's actually not an abandoned vehicle. Abandoned vehicle means somebody just brought a vehicle, dropped it on your lot, you had no idea where it came from. It's like an alien spaceship dropped a car on your driveway. Most of the time, when somebody says abandoned vehicle, that's not what happened. They know where it came from. Somebody left it there to do work on. Maybe it's a friend who, moved to another state and they just left their car. Maybe they bought it on Craigslist and didn't get a title. Usually what's referred to as abandoned really is not abandoned. It's a title transfer problem, or you're missing paperwork problem. And if you start using the word abandoned when you're filing at the DMV, you're going to immediately make that vehicle harder to get a title than if you go through another process that's available. Hopefully, the stories of those consumers who lost their cars because of an easy loophole for abandoned vehicles gives you some understanding of why the DMV doesn't just magically hand over titles as soon as you start claiming abandoned. They're going to make you jump through a million hoops, and you're going to have to sign on the application saying that the vehicle is abandoned. I have no idea where it came from. This mysterious vehicle showed up. You can take comfort in the fact that because of the process is going to be so difficult for you to get a title, that it's also going to be difficult for a criminal to take the vehicle from you later. If it was really easy to get a title, that you might think, well, that's good. I don't want to go through all this trouble. Well, that's great. But now if you have the car parked in your driveway and it's real easy to get a title, some other devious, sketchy person can walk around your neighborhood at night, get your plate number, get your VIN number off the dashboard, fill out some forms, file for an abandoned vehicle, wait a week or so to get the title, get a set of keys from the dealership, and then when you're not looking, just show up in your driveway, drive your car away. What makes it worse is when that happens, if you call the police and say, hey, my car's stolen, they'll look it up in the system to say it's not in your name. You can't file for a stolen car because it's in somebody else's name. So that would be a nightmare scenario for you. So the DMV is trying to look out for you and protect you. Certainly, that extra protection makes it a little less convenient for you to get a title for a car or truck that you bought or maybe somebody gave to you that you're having trouble getting a title. There are other ways you can get a title, but jumping right to abandoned vehicle, as a lot of websites, forums, urban legends will tell you, is not the way to go 99% of the time. Most of the time, we hear it all the time. We get 400 or 500 calls a day, and many people have said, I tried to file for an abandoned vehicle, and now the DMV won't even talk to me. Now it's been identified as abandoned, and I can't do anything to get a title. What can you do? And we check into it, and we find out that VIN number now has a flag on it, that they won't title it under any conditions unless it goes through a court process or a very extensive research and investigation internally in their fraud department. So be very careful when using the word abandoned vehicle, because stories like this that we just looked at happen all the time because people are creative. They use any kind of little loophole they can to commit crimes. And if there is a overlooked method of doing paperwork to steal somebody's car legally, somebody will find out and they'll figure it out. And sure, closing that loophole might make your title process a little more inconvenient, but in the long run, it'll help consumers to not have their vehicle taken out from under them, not be able to file a stolen vehicle, and not have transportation to get them back and forth where they need to go. Don't forget to comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts about abandoned vehicles, vehicle titling, questions about paperwork, and even your experience with any of these processes, so that we can hear from you. Other potential consumers that have title problems can hear from you, because title processing is not easy. The DMV makes it difficult. We know that. and your experience can help consumers figure out and navigate the process to get the right paperwork for their vehicle.